Okay, well, everyone, welcome to Connect with Lloyd's. This is the forum, really, it's designed to be an interactive forum between sort of, our whole membership of the MGA. I'm Marco Del Carlo, I'm a director of the MGA, joined by Julia at the controls. Hopefully she'll make sure everything works for us. And everything will run smoothly. As discussed, it's designed to be an interactive forum. So, if you have questions, by all means, just, stick your hand up, open your mic, or just use the chat facility. And by all means, just ask questions as we go through. An agenda was sent out before this. Thank you very much to Julia and for having coordinated that, as well as Tim Richards, who's away today. Just a few other things too before we kick off. This can count for, it's recommended you can use this for CPD as well. So I think we recommend 30 minutes CPD as well for this, if you want to add to your continuous professional development. An agenda was sent out today. We're joined today by a number of people. We're going to have Carla Wise. If Carla's here, I take it, speaking on computable contracts. Stuart Spinks joining us to talk about underwriting performance management. Alan Bruce got a couple topics on there for future at Lloyd's and DA strategic principles. Saidul Islam on fast claim payments, various updates there, and Jack Knappen and Harris Khan providing an update on Lloyd's Europe. That's what's on the agenda. Fairly rich agenda today to try to get through. First item.
Sorry, may I just, Carla's going to be joining us a little bit later. So if it's okay with you, as you're ready, we'll start with the earlier presenter, and as I say, Carla will join us a little bit later.
Okay, thanks, Julia. Thanks for advising. First item we have on our agenda is conflicts of interest. Anyone have a conflict of interest here? Sort of a standard item that we have.
Thank you, not here.
Fantastic. Next item up on our agenda was just last Connect with Lloyd's that we had was on the 19th of April, where we discussed the lapsed cover holder program and then as well the syndicate in a box model and new syndicates. Just wanted to see if there was any comments or questions. And Julia, did we get any? Was there any follow-up from that?
No, nothing at this time, Marco.
Okay. I mean, personally, I thought it was a very informative session for many MJs out there. I always think that syndicate in a box is or should be a natural progression for many MJs and something that should be considered. And that, at this stage, I feel like there's a missed opportunity right now in the market for Lloyd's. So I'm hoping it's one of those things that continued dialogue, continued engagement will, foster a greater roadmap, if you will, for many MJs into a syndicate in a box and syndicate model. There's nothing there. We'll go to the next first topic up on the agenda, which is Stuart Spink. Stuart's head of delegated authority underwriting performance at Lloyd's. Hopefully I got that right.
Yeah, that's right. Bit of a mouthful.
So, keen topic, close to my heart. And you joined from Aviva from a few years ago, where you spent many years there.
That's correct. Thanks, Marco. Yeah, so thanks for having me and having sort of the opportunity to talk through sort of the underwriting performance side of things. So yeah, I joined Lloyd's 1st of March 2022, but came into this role of head of delegated underwriting performance sort of May 2023. So fairly new in this role, but I sit in the underwriting division here at Lloyd's, which is part of the markets sort of wider division. So the likes of Jane, who we've got on the call, and sort of Paul Brady, who I'm sure many of you probably spoken to in the past, we all sit literally on the same floor. We're in the same division, so work very closely with the oversight team and Nick Donovan as well, who sits in the commercial team in market. So Mark, if it's all right with you, I was just going to kick off, and I've got a few slides that I was going to share as we go through the presentation, but happy to take questions as we go along. Does that work for everyone?
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect. So I'm actually, this is I'm keen to hear what you have to say. So,
Okay. Well,
Julia, does he have control?
Yes, Stuart, you can share your slide deck right
Great.
now.
Thanks.
but let me.
Stuart, over to you.
So I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully this works. Does that come through?
It has, yes. If you just share the full screen, that's perfect. Thanks, Stuart.
No problem. So yeah, so there was a few things that I just wanted to cover, and I thought what would be quite useful, given we've recently just communicated our market message out to all of our managing agents. I always think it's really important that the cover holders that are operating in a market kind of hear the same messages that we're giving out to the market, given you're, just an extended underwriting part of the whole Lloyd's ecosystem in which we operate. So what I wanted to do was cover sort of three things. Whilst we don't give a sort of quarterly update from a sort of financial perspective, I thought it'd be quite useful to give a quick overview of our outlook for 2023 and some of the early insights that we've seen in the first half of the year. And then second bit that I thought would be quite useful to share is we've recently conducted a piece of work internally in Lloyd's, which has looked at the Lloyd's portfolio and how that's changed over the last 10 years. And I think it's quite important that we, some of the insights that we've got there is helping to shape what we want to do in the future. So talk through that. And then finally, what I wanted to do was talk through some of the focus areas that we're looking at, not just within sort of the delegated authority space. This includes open market as well. So some of the classes which, as we go into sort of the planning season and stuff that we've been doing over the last 18 months, these are sort of the focus areas that we've been looking at. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's just some of the ones that, from a sort of materiality perspective, we're sort of homing in from a performance management perspective. So just before we sort of go into sort of the main slide deck, you've probably heard Lloyd's talk for the last sort of 24 months, and I'm sure everyone's sort of been experiencing this, is sort of the heightened uncertainty that we're all operating in. And it was, we were sort of having a reflection ourselves fairly recently when, we've got a sort of conflict entering its 16th month in Europe. We've got all sort of the geopolitical tensions and economic challenges sort of in the macro environment. We've got inflation still at a sort of 20-year and sort of some 40-year high in some areas. I saw sort of the UK just announced this morning it's still at 8.7%. And we've actually experienced sort of Nat Cat losses sort of higher than our expected levels, sort of 6 out of the 7 or so, higher than our average 6 out of the 7 over the last few years. So with that sort of backdrop and that uncertainty, when we come to some of the results to show you, the reason the remediation, some of the work that I'm definitely not going to take credit for, having joined Lloyd's just over a year ago, we really wanted to get ourselves into position to enable us to withstand some of the uncertainty that we know we're facing in the world. And as a market, we are still really optimistic of where Lloyd's place is and actually some of the opportunities that we're seeing out there. So I just thought it's useful just to kind of give a bit of a backdrop to some of the conditions that I'm sure everyone's experiencing and from an underwriting perspective. I'm not going to talk for too long on this slide, particularly on some of the results, because given that we're in sort of middle part of towards the end of June, 2022 feels like a long time ago, but it is important that we kind of reference it because it gives us a base for some of the performance management and more sort of commercial conversation Lloyd's are having in the market at this time. So like I said, if you go back a few years, we have as a market gone through significant remediation. We're really encouraged by the sort of set of results that we've seen over the last couple of years from a gap perspective. So delivering a 91.9% core was something that we were pretty pleased with. From an attritional perspective, you can see that's reduced to 48.4, which kind of shows the the underwriting discipline and pricing that we've got in the market is where it needs to be from an attritional perspective. When we kind of look sort of forward looking, and this kind of brings us up to where we are for here and now in 2023, we are anticipating further growth in 2023. You can see that overall we're expecting the overall Lloyd's portfolio to reach somewhere in the region of about 56.7 billion. That's slightly up from when we went through the planning process towards the end of 2022. The main sort of, sorry, I should say actually in the first quarter from a cat perspective, it's been pretty quiet. That's sort of both natural and man-made. That's sort of given sort of when you look at the Lloyd's portfolio, that's sort of driving that sort of quiet cat experience that we've seen in the first quarter. We are seeing sort of significant changes still and rating conditions in the property DNF and treaty market. Again, I think it's been well talked about in sort of number of different forums around some of the negative trends we've seen in the FinPro classes, which is an area which we'll come on to in a bit more detail that we're having a greater level of focus. Like I said, growth, we're still expecting sort of 15% growth in top line in 2023, and we've actually seen a slight uplift in our anticipated risk-adjusted rate change. I know all insurers have loads of different acronyms. I'm still learning the Lloyd's lingo a year on. Risk-adjusted rate change in Lloyd's is net of inflation. So again, primary drivers of that we're seeing in the property classes of DNF and treaty, and sort of some of the sort of negative trends of rate in cyber and financial lines. So that kind of gives a backdrop to kind of where we are. So sort of quietly optimistic of 2023 and how that's shaping up, which has all been sort of brought out by the hard work of the market over the last few years to get us into this position. I mentioned that we'd recently completed an exercise and this is across the whole of the corporation, and it's something that we shared with the managing agents and syndicates recently. I thought it'd be quite good to share with yourselves. Is just seeing how the Lloyd's portfolio has changed over time. So you can see on the left hand side the long tail nature of our portfolio has significantly increased from 40% in 2022 compared to 29% in 2013, and that's kind of reflective of obviously a number of the assets changing from one side of the balance sheet to the other. And you can see on the right hand side, whilst property DNF still remains our sort of largest portfolio at an L10 class, which is sort of as how we structure the classes from a Lloyd's perspective. When you aggregate the FinPro, treaty and other classes together, you can see that it's pretty comparable with the property book now, which sort of reflects the long tail nature, like we said on the left hand side. Just quite interesting to see how this has changed over time. Something that we've also been able to have a look at is sort of the geographical splits of where we've seen that growth over time. So on the top left hand side, you can see over the last 10 years, we've seen significant growth in our Americas region, predominantly the US and Canada. And where we do continue to see growth is it tends to be in those geographics where the Lloyd's wholesale subscription market is sort of supplementary to some of the local domestic insurance carriers which are sort of operating in that space. One chart that I'm sure many on the call will be interested in is the distribution method and how that's again changed over time. So you can see in 2022, our delegated authority portfolio now makes up 40% of our overall portfolio. So really significant part, something we're proud of, and you can see it's sort of increased from 32% back in 2013. We have seen a slight decline in our reinsurance portfolio, and that's something that again we're kind of actively looking at some of. And I think we might have Nick Donovan and someone in the commercial team coming at a later date to talk a little bit more around what we're doing in that space. So just thought it'd be quite useful just to share that the shape of the portfolio, because it's something that we're in underwriting and the wider markets team from an oversight perspective. As the portfolio changes, we are continuously having a look to see from a Lloyd's perspective, have we got the right levels of focus from an oversight across the market. So hopefully that's useful, some early insight from what we've seen recently. If it's all right, I'm going to quickly, I'll pause in case there's any questions. If not, I was going to go on to some of the focus areas that we're looking at from an underwriting perspective.
Stuart, sorry, it's Julian Coakley. I'm the Director of Operations at the MGAA. The actual slide deck here that you've got, would you be comfortable sharing that with the MGAA that we can disseminate to those that were registered?
Yeah, no problem at all. These slides are meant to be in a position that can go external. So yeah, happy to share that share that with yourself after the call, and then if there's any other sort of questions, pick up separately if that works.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate that.
Stuart, hi, it's Andrew Welfare here. Just a quick question on the change in the profile, particularly around class and the distribution. Are these particular to Lloyd's? Do you have any sense of if that's being replicated across the company market, or, and if it is Lloyd's, do you know what the drivers are for the changes?
I would say from the long tail and short tail element, that's definitely something I would say is reflective across sort of the wider insurance market. So I'm sure the company market have seen this. If you think of the introduction of cyber, D&O, and some of the financial lines, where you've obviously got the sort of I'd say the FinPro classes, which are still becoming more mature. Cyber is still sort of in that developing phase. The long tail nature of those products have obviously significantly increased, and that as a market, cyber alone is sort of significantly increasing. It was our largest growing class in 2022, and even before that we'd seen significant growth. So I'd say from a class perspective, that long tail, short tail nature would be reflective across the wider market. When it comes to the distribution split, I'd say that's maybe where the Lloyd's market might be slightly different compared to some of the other company markets that are operating. Again, this is just me, just my own opinion. The historical sort of structure that we have in place and the onboarding team that Jane and have managed to develop, and also our license structure means that the delegated authority portfolio makes it quite an attractive proposition to sort of syndicates. I think the geographical licenses that we have and expertise that are around the world and mean that actually the delegated authority is quite often a viable proposition to sort of acquiring customers and distribution that some of the syndicates might not be able to write within their sort of domestic markets. So we've definitely seen an increase. I don't know whether that would be the same case for some of the company market who over the last few years have probably maybe gone the other way in terms of sort of restricting some of their underwriting appetite for DA business.
Thank you.
I can't actually see, it's one of those, on Zoom where you can't see anyone. So just shout if you've got any other questions, because all I can see is a slide.
Stuart, Marco here. Is there any sort of analysis of the delegated authority business of any sort? Because I would recognize that delegated can be very different than direct, open market direct and open market reinsurance. My sense is, it's going to be focused more on attritional business rather than cat business and the like. And whereas I think the data here is very It's very Lloyd's market wide.
Yeah, so this is something that as part of my new role, it's something that we're going to be looking to try and increase the visibility when it comes to the delegated authority space. So as you know, the way in which Lloyd's operate, it's at sort of a risk code level. There's certain areas where historically they'd set up risk codes. So if I take property, for example, we've got sort of clear segregation from our open market D&F portfolio versus our property binder space, and even within the binder space we're able to split it US and international. One of the challenges that we've got, and this is where, given it's sort of 40% of our overall portfolio, that visibility from a sort of GWP and performance perspective across some of the other sort of specialty lines and FinPro hasn't had that level of focus from a performance management perspective. So as we're kind of starting to develop the strategy, that's something that we're going to be looking to try and increase the visibility, just so that we can kind of see where the areas of strong performance, which again, obviously the syndicates, it's their underwriting appetite, their capital, it's for their decisions to underwrite, but also where there is underperformance within the DA portfolio will be, when it comes to planning and the framework that we'll be looking to create, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. It'll just have that visibility. So it's pretty light on the delegated space when you start to split it down. There's certain classes, like I said, in property where we do have that visibility, but definitely more to come in that space.
Yeah, exactly. Because I guess I see DA very much as, focusing more on the volume, it's higher volume, lower value, lower volatility. Whereas as soon as you get into open market, business, direct, and reinsurance, it's much, much, much higher volatility, more cat risk. And so I think the profiles of DA is very different than the profile of open market business.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm glad to see you're looking at that. It's hence the reason why it's a keen area to learn more about and understand what you're doing.
Cool.
Thanks.
No problem. Conscious of time, I'll move on just to some of the areas that we're looking at. You can see, sorry, it's a bit of a busy slide in terms of the stuff that's in here, but I mentioned around the geopolitical tension that we're obviously seeing in the sort of the global economic, global political space around the world. This is something. Obviously, we all kind of witnessed the invasion of Ukraine last year, and trying to get on the front foot of what's going on in the wider political spectrum. We've recently completed a exercise with the market, which looked at 3 scenarios in the Taiwan Straits. It's something that we've asked the market to provide some more information on, and it'll be something we'll probably be looking to communicate later down the line. But it's, as we look in that space, the sort of messaging that we've been given to the market, particularly in the political violence, terror, social rights and civil commotion lines of business, with the way the market has gone from a reinsurance perspective and net lines increasing, we're wanting the market to really consider their net exposures and ensuring that the price adequacy and rate that they're wanting to achieve in that space, given the sort of change of underwriting environment which they're operating in, is being reflected. We don't think from some of the facilities that have been set up in that space, some of the underwriting sort of terms and conditions that have been agreed to is something that we're having a closer look at, and we're in the moment also in the middle of completing a deep dive with the market, sort of some of the material plays in this market, which again, I think we're looking to communicate something later in August around some of the findings that we've seen in that space. But it's something that we're definitely keeping a close eye on. When we look at the macroeconomic pressures, again, everyone will be closely and feeling the impacts of inflation. We, as a market, felt that the Lloyd's market did a good exercise on inflation in 2022. It's something that we are closely monitoring in 2023 as we start to go into 2024 plans from both the pricing, reserving and capital space. I mentioned FinPro and D&O again. This is something that our underwriting lead for D&O is in the process of completing a deep dive in the Lloyd's D&O market, because some of the challenges we've seen in the reduction of rate in this market over the last 18 months is something that we're wanting to get a better understanding of what's going on from a price adequacy perspective, and making sure that price adequacy doesn't drop below the level at which it needs to sustain this of the ultimate underwriting profit. I've got a graph here that kind of shows the reason why we are having a look at it. So this shows the D&O loss deterioration that we've seen across the Lloyd's market over the last few years. So you've got years 1, years 4, and the latest fiscal year that we've got data on this is 2021, and you can see across the portfolio when it comes to the deterioration in performance, you can see every single year has moved out from years 1 to year 4, and the recent years of sort of strong performance in the D&O market, we're just wanting to make sure people are actively looking at this. You know, the reserving teams are joined up from an underwriting perspective, and that sort of strong performance in year 1 and then deteriorations further down the line, that people are considering this when they're looking at their overall underwriting strategies and pricing strategies within this portfolio. So again, this is something that once we've got the findings from our deep dive, we'll be communicating to the market, and something I'll be able to share later in the year once we've completed that exercise. This bit, which is a lot more closer to my heart, is delegated underwriting. As I mentioned, obviously got Jane on the call and Paul. Lloyd's have always had a strong DA portfolio, which has grown over the last few years from the slide that I showed you previously. The role that I started in April this year was a new role within Lloyd's, and the reason why we wanted to do that was just to make sure that we've got a sort of a real strong focus when it comes to and actually trying to look to enhance the performance management oversight that we've got in the DA space. As the Lloyd's Corporation, our primary oversight will always be through the managing agents and syndicates. And what we aren't looking to do is to, this isn't another sort of decile 10 exercise that Lloyd's are wanting to start. This is absolutely trying to improve the performance management frameworks which we all operate within in the DA space. There's some absolute brilliant cover holders who I'm sure we've got on the call today, and you can see that, as I mentioned, the DA portfolio is a really material part to our market, and something that we're really proud of. But we just feel that Lloyd's need to be a bit more visible as to what good looks like and what bad looks like in the performance management space. So that's something that we're in the process of developing this year. We'll be looking to roll this out in the set sort of towards the end of 2023, whereby we'll be looking to set a framework, working with the market to create that. So again, I can't see if Carla's joined the call. We're working closely with the LMA, syndicates, working with brokers, cover holders to try and establish this framework. We don't want this just to be Lloyd squirreled away working on something. We're sort of actively in the market, hearing what's good, what's bad, and where we can help bring the Lloyd's market up, so how we can help make it easier to do business in the Lloyd's market, as well as making sure that we've got the right underwriting controls in place. The reason why we've done that is, if you look on here, this is at an overall portfolio. Historical performance does show that in soft market conditions, there is sort of an acceleration in deterioration of performance. And then as we've moved into sort of harder market conditions, some of the remediations taken longer to take effect. Like I said, this is at a total level across the whole of the market within the DA space. What I would say is those that have got the right have got the right underwriting controls, have delivered strong underwriting performance, are investing in capability, data, etc. We're absolutely looking to support you and wanting to help the Lloyd's market a better place for you to be doing business. At the same time, when we look at this, we do know that there's certain areas where, from a performance perspective, we want to sort of uplift the market to get a better level of performance management oversight in the DA space.
Stuart, what's the measure on that? What is that? Is that rate? Is it?
This is net combined operating ratio. So you can see we've got the core at 100% dotted line. So anything above the line is obviously at a period when we work where you aren't making money at a total level.
Stuart, is this review specifically around underwriting performance, or will you look more holistically at the ease of doing? You did mention ease of doing business in Lloyd's, but the mechanisms that are coming in future of Lloyd's and so forth to try and bring down the cost of doing business from an MGA perspective.
Absolutely. So we've got Jane on the call, and like I said, Jane and I work really closely. And my view when it comes to sort of DA, the whole ecosystem needs to be totally aligned, whether it's sort of your onboarding, your ops, your performance management oversight, your distribution, all of this, actuarial oversight, etc. So if you think of, I know we've got some, I think on the agenda later on, we've got an update on Blueprint 2. Obviously, there's been a huge level of focus for sort of helping to try and reduce costs for operation in that space. Jane and the team sort of continuously look to review the onboarding process, and always open to feedback. We're sort of with the cover holder yesterday taking feedback on how it feels to operate in the Lloyd's market. So yeah, that's something. This isn't just performance and we're leaving the other stuff behind. It's just we're sort of enhancing the performance management oversight with myself sort of coming in and looking to build the team to have this focus, which is something we haven't had previously in the Lloyd's Corporation.
Sorry, you do have broken out delegated underwriting performance stats then? I thought from earlier slides you said you didn't.
So I thought he meant, so when we were having the conversation around breaking the DA down into its, geographical class, product, etc. The only performance stats that we've got at the moment, and again, this is only at a total level across the whole of the portfolio. We aren't able to break this down sort of any sub-segments other than, say, in the property space where we have those risk codes that allow us to do so.
So what does this slide show then for the overall Lloyd's?
This shows, so of the from 32 to 40% of the overall Lloyd's portfolio, a DA portfolio, this shows the performance over time in comparison to open market non-DA. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think I guess there's a belief that underneath all of this, there's data that's out there that then you've used to build up DA versus non-DA. So it was really kind of getting behind that.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we're doing internally. So yeah. Lloyd's again. I'll say this, I've only been here just over a year, but from what I've heard in the sort of first 14, 15 months is Lloyd's are very good at historically for asking the market for lots of information. And we already ask for lots of information and variety of reporting standards, whether it's sort of existing performance reports that they do as part of their existing planning. There's obviously all of the exchanging, there's reserving, there's a whole host of reports that we get access in the corporation. one of the bits of work that we're doing across the piece is let's have a review of all of the information that we currently ask the market to provide us to see, does that enable us to start to have a better sort of level of detail when it comes to DA? Because it actually might be that with the various sort of reports and method of placements and putting data together, we're able to get that sort of greater granularity in terms of what's actually going on. But if we do that, what we want to do is this sort of gap analysis of what's the here and now, what does it enable us to get before we go and ask for more information, because I'm sure that's the last thing people want to hear from Lloyd's in terms of more reporting standards. But so that's exactly what we're doing at the moment to see actually does existing reporting enable us to get it. It's just something that hasn't had the level of focus that we're wanting to give it now.
I mean, from my perspective, I mean, I think it's absolutely heading in the right direction. I mean, what we're trying to do in our community, mainly as MGAs, cover holders, a lot of that is, many times it's a question of trying to make sure that MGAs and cover holders as a whole are focused on the areas that commercially make sense. And
totally
coming from an area that has got informed, that there's, that if you're focused on particular classes of business, particular territories, these are the right areas to go into, because this is what the data is telling us. But this, it's just that data isn't quite shared, and that makes it very difficult to be able to provide direction. So I think that's what we're just trying to do, is just improve that so that more and better business can make its way into Lloyd's.
Exactly. Yeah.
At this stage, it's just we don't quite. There's definitely an information gap. We can see that already. You're starting to fill some of that. So music to my ears. So
no, and strategically, obviously, we like I said, the decision to underwrite a cover holder obviously sits with the syndicates themselves as to sort of their own underwriting appetite, but as a Lloyd's market and corporation trying to support the better flow of DA business into the Lloyd's market, so that we've got, with the strong underwriting capabilities, is exactly what we're trying to do in underwriting, in the commercial space, even in oversight, to try and encourage that. So I think we're aligned in that space.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. If you want to keep on going, because I appreciate that we've got a lot.
Yeah. Just quickly, the last one, which I'll just finish on, just that again, a number of people have seen in the market reference to sort of Lloyd's approach to cyber. This is absolutely something that we, Lloyd's write 20% or circa 20% of the world's cyber premium here in Lloyd's, so we're a material player when it comes to sort of the global cyber market. The bulletin that we issued back in August with regards to state-backed cyber exclusions is something that we are continuing to work closely with the syndicates to ensure that they're operating to what the bulletin says. Like I said, this wasn't that bulletin wasn't to say you can't write that in Lloyd's. What we're wanting to do is effectively strip it out from the main product set, ensure that it's aggregated, priced. We've got the right levels of exposure and oversight in that space. So that's definitely something that Neil, who works in my team, is going to be sort of further work. There's a lot more work to do in the cyber space, but just wanted to acknowledge that that's something that it's been pretty noisy the last few months in this space, but it's something we feel that we had to do for the sort of greater good of the market to ensure that we're managing the systemic nature that sits within the cyber portfolio. Conscious of the time and to avoid me rambling on anymore, I'll leave it there and then allow you to go on to some of the other topics on the agenda. But happy to share slides, and if there's any subsequent questions afterwards, happy to pick them up offline.
Thank you very much, Stuart. That was great. Yeah, any additional questions for Stuart, by all means, just route them through chat or direct them to him. Stuart, we'd love to have you back. Definitely. Keen. This is a topic and area that I think has got a lot more legs all of us being underwriters in the market, we're keen to underwrite good business and deliver underwriting profit. Having information that helps and rooting that and make sure it makes its way into Lloyd's is I think what we're trying to achieve here.
Thanks, Marco. Hopefully you can see me now and not the slides as well.
Many thanks.
Marco, just to let you know, Jane Harley had to drop off the call. I think she only had the early part of the meeting, so we'll pass over her contribution today.
Okay, thanks. Has Carla now joined us?
Carla's now on the line, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Can Carla was going to give us an update on computable contracts. Again, another topic that's of keen interest to MJ's cover holders and the initiative that's going on there. Carla, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. So yeah, I came and spoke to you about this a few months ago now, and I believe I gave you a demo at that time of our prototype that we'd created. So as I'm sure is not a surprise to anyone, any of these market initiatives take quite a while to bring together. So which is why you've kind of not really heard anything from us for a while, is because not much has kind of happened to share, but a lot has been kind of going on in the background. So for starters, obviously what our goal was to be able to take the prototype and complete it and build out the full set of modules that had been sort of devised by Axiom. And we took that request to the LMA board in May, and we got agreement in principle to move forward with that. So what we're busy doing now is putting a more comprehensive project plan together. We're kind of busy aligning with Lloyd's and the JV to talk about how kind of the computable contract fits in with sort of the CDR and the data work that's going on, as well as the digital gateway through the joint venture, and how all those pieces tie together, because I think it's really important that we're moving forward as one and we don't kind of have separate silos of work going on in various places. We're also speaking to some brokers about joining us to run with a pilot, and that's a piece of work to kind of sign those brokers up over the next 3 months. And then what we would like to do is kickstart the actual sort of writing of the new wording or standard wording in September. So that's our aim at the moment. Again, a lot of work to be done in order to make that start date happen, but that's what we're working to at the moment. So that's very much drafting of the new language starting September, and we would look for that to take about a year. And then hopefully over the next couple of months, we'll be able to firm up the technology partners that we'll be working with, and kind of the timeline for getting those words into the software and into a contract creator that the market can use. So that's where we're at the moment. So hopefully kind of by September, I'll be able to come back and give a bit more of a kind of a comprehensive plan and an idea of where you can get involved, because this is very much still wanting everyone's feedback. So as we start drafting these new modules, we want brokers and cover holders to join us and feedback and check that these contracts are going to work for everyone. So there's been nothing going on in the background with us working on that stuff without incorporating everyone, because as with the whole of the DARE initiative, this is definitely a collaborative effort between everyone in the DA community. So that's where we are with that one. Any questions?
Carl, I think when we last spoke, and it was, I'm going to say 3 months ago or so, can't remember, you were also trying to sort out budget, resource, all that. Where did you get to on that?
Yeah, so that was, I now have support in terms of a project team. So we're actually working with Limos, who are providing the project management to kind of like kick some of these conversations off. And then the budget, a provisional budget was agreed in May, but we need to go back again in September with more firm idea of the costings. So the the ballpark is agreed of what this is going to cost, but we need to start drawing down on those funds, and that will commence from September.
Okay. Yeah, I remember liking this in terms of the idea. I haven't been close to it at all, so I'm not aware. I just wanted to, are there others that are on the call today that are closer to it, have questions, or can provide comment?
Not here in the office, Marco.
Okay.
Now, I see a couple of names on the call who I have spoken to about this, so they're keeping quiet, but they do know what's going on. But just to be honest, in anger, this isn't going to sort of start till September, which is when we'll really start trying to connect with you and get your advice and input.
Yeah, obviously, Carla, just from a Lloyd's perspective, between the LMA and Lloyd's, we're joined up on this, and Carla's been speaking to Paul. I know Jane, who had to chop off, closely working with this, so I just thought I'd add that in as well.
Yeah. Just lots of moving parts to pull together.
And can you remind me, is there any representation from MJA on the steering committee or the
not as yet, but from September that's something that we will look to put in place. So again, something we're working through is kind of the governance structure. There's a lot of boards that are very interested in having us report to them, so it's just making sure that we've got the right people in the right place at the right time. So I think there'll be a couple of different levels of kind of input we need from different organisations. So that's something else we're working through. But as I said, it was until I kind of got this Limos support team on, it was me flying solo. So a lot of this stuff I just wasn't able to get to. But we're there now. So in the next few weeks, things should start coming together.
Carla, a quick question. If you're working with Limos, is this remaining sort of independent principle, or is it going to get linked to PPL?
Sorry, I missed the middle part of your...
I just wondered, with working with Limos,
Yes.
They're purely providing project management, or is it starting to link with Limos products, for example, like...
So yes, so it might. So the idea is, so if you remember that there will be a digital wordings library. So that's where the wording objects will be held. The idea at the moment is that will be held in the market business glossary. So the same place where the kind of the data standards and the CDR and the MRC version 3 is, where we're looking to hold the digital library there, so that the contract builder would kind of connect to that and pull in via API the wording object. So we'd kind of have this central library that was the single version of the truth for the wording elements. So yes, we are looking to use a Limos product for that. And then when we launch out with the contract creator, which will largely be something used by brokers, although everyone will have the ability to view, that will link in with the market business glossary and will be run as a market service by Limos.
But will brokers then need to be tied to PPL to use the...
Not necessarily, no, PPL. So this is wider than kind of
Okay.
PPL. There's a potential that PPL or Whitespace or something in particular might provide the kind of the electronic signing capability, but that's still being explored.
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much, Carla. Much appreciated. We're running a few minutes behind schedule. That was
Yep.
Look forward to next steps with that.
Yep.
And more.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks.
Alan, over to you. I know you're supposed to be on for 30 minutes. I can ask you to kind of maybe shave 10 minutes or fly through it, just to allow for others to speak would be great.
Okay, I've got host is disabled screen sharing, so somebody might need to add me to that to be able to share some slides.
Bear with me, Alan, just doing that now for you.
Much.
There you go, should be good to go.
Right, let's see if I can bring that one up. And here we go. Of course, all the best laid plans. Right. Oh, hang on. Looks like I'm having a little bit of a problem. There we go. Hopefully you can see some screen. Blueprint 2 MGA update.
Right, thanks, Alan.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to rattle through this, so put your seatbelts on. Going to be a roller coaster. So we had a session this week actually for the wider market. Within this deck, it was targeted at brokers and carriers within the London market, so you'll see some of the terminology about you, etc. But sort of just kind of bear that in mind as we go through. It's not directly related to the MGA in terms of the audience. So really we went through kind of the performance and progress made so far this year. There's a number of things that we've kind of touched on before around the open market core data record and market reform contract, all of the work that's gone behind that. We've had a consultation on process roles and responsibilities around creating the market reform contract and the CDR. Had great response back from the market, and we're due to go out. We've given some summary findings around that, and we're due to go out with confirmed roles and responsibilities later this quarter. We've, from a general joint venture perspective, the global premium and claim service, which was kind of a sequence to, is now live. And there was a data migration, the largest data migration that they've ever known in the market took place and has been successful. And from our perspective, we've been looking at the messaging the market and release specifications for any revisions to EDI. So as we continue, we've got faster claims payment, and we've got Seidel, who I'll introduce later, to run through where we are on that. And also there was the Lloyd's claim lead arrangements consultation concluded as well. And we announced the guiding principles for delegated authority data strategy, which I'll touch on a little bit later as well. Blueprint 2 model office, we've got space on the 3rd floor here in the Lloyd's building where you can come in and use interactive screens to see what's happening from a Blueprint 2 perspective. And again, the engagement effort that we've got with the market, we're now working with all carriers, top 50 brokers and the smaller ones as a kind of group on how people get prepared for the change, along with the service providers and of course yourselves. So this slide's been wanting to pop onto screen several times too early. Quite a busy slide, but what it does is refocuses the timeline that we've shared with the market. As I said, sequence 2, which is the global solution, so not the London market, went live at the end of Q1. We've been looking at the deployment approach for the digital services for the London market. There has been a change to what we're looking to do here. We will now be moving the whole market onto what we're calling phase 1 digital adoption, which means that everybody will move to utilizing the digital services in June 2024. Now, those digital services will still be able to work with the current EDI messaging in the market. So for market firms, we think that that first step is a low complexity change step to enable the market to still utilize the messaging they use today, but benefit from the digital services within the joint venture, which provide a more stable and modern interface for users, which brings benefits in itself. It's a cloud-based service, digital services, so they're easier to maintain and develop, obviously a lot more stable than some of the old mainframe applications that people have been using to date. Then as we work through delivering the rest of the digital services, so such as the digital gateway, we'll then have phase 2 digital service adoption available in September next year. And that will see or give the option for market firms to move into using ECOT and EBOT messaging to Accord standards going forward to really complete the digital journey around having standard structured messaging end-to-end through the process. So that's the timeline. We, as I say, bringing forward the phase 1 go live date. The option to move either way was originally in September. We're bringing forward now a phase 1, so everyone moves off the legacy mainframe systems and onto the digital services within the JV in June. And then say when we get to September, they have that option then to start moving across to using EBOT and ECOT messaging. There's a number of steps that we've got to achieve to support that as well, and that's in the blue line below, but given the time frame, I won't go through each of those. So moving on, there's some things that we need to do, as I say. It's being clear on the requirements on what brokers and carriers need to do by September this year, coming up with some of the technology specifications that are required for adoption again by September, and the model office showing how that supports adoption, building that out. So everything you can see is September. And we will start testing sequence 3 and 4, which you'll see from the previous slide, with the London market variations for open market and DA from September as well, with what we're calling Vanguard participants. We've got a number of firms within the market. It's about a dozen that have stood forward to be early testers of these systems. So they won't be fully complete, but there'll be elements of the systems that they can test today to give us some insight around some of the benefits and challenges that these new digital services will provide. And then that will continue as we go through the year. And then we're looking to provide training materials to the market from around October onwards, and training into early next year. More to do. That testing will continue through next year from January. The open market and DA testing will commence in April next year, and along with the digital gateway in July next year, with phase 1 services being introduced at the end of June, as I said, and phase 2 at the end of August. So really that optionality from September onwards for the market to use digital messaging. In terms of the work that we've been doing around structured data, the data standards for messaging, the Accord messaging, is being aligned. So we're working closely with them. We know that we've still got to add in some claims data records to the CDR, and there's a couple of elements of risk, so that will then complete the CDR fully. We're at version 3.2 now, but once those are in, that will be finalized. We've also got the MRC version 3, which is around the brokers creating the data in the right structure to be able to fulfill the CDR and downstream digital processing. That's been agreed. And as I say, the data assembly, including roles and responsibilities, came out of the consultation, which we will be coming back to in Q3 on the definitive roles. And then it's looking at API standards as well, so market firms can understand how they get that data to and from the digital gateway in the future, or placing platforms, etc. So we've been working heavily with a number of firms within the Data Council within the London Market Group. They're the ones who've been driving this work. It's not Lloyd's, it is a market show from brokers, managing agents and company markets. So they're the ones who've been working on that through the Data Council. And then we've talked about the CDR before with you guys. So we know that the CDR is all around making sure that we've got tax validations, claims matching. It enables claims matching, auto claims matching. It enables downstream accounting and settlement automation, and also supports regulatory reporting. So all of the CDR data standards, as they're aligned to Accord, and that gives us that structured data to flow through. I'm showing you here the core data record fields that have been set up for open market. And I'm showing you this because obviously there is, as we get onto the strategic principles for DA, an intention to align cover holder version 5.2 standards to the CDR, and that work is in place. So this will just give you a sense of, in total, a CDR has 232 fields, but we believe that not every risk would need those, far from it. On an average risk for an open market slip, we think about 125 fields would be required, and if it's a company market, less than that. And really, by comparison, that, you know, if you're just making a simple order on Amazon, you're putting in 30 fields today. So for a complex risk versus an order of your latest gardening whim, you've got not that much more data than you would need. So that's a major achievement in the sense of minimizing the number of data fields that are required for the value that it brings. As I mentioned on the process roles and responsibilities consultation, really we set out to say, well, which component of the market does what? So how does a broker, what's the broker's responsibility in gathering data for the CDR? What's the carrier's responsibility, etc.? We now have clear creator and approval roles set out. So yes, maybe it's the broker that's creator and it's the carrier that's approver, etc. So they've been set out. There was no objection to those through the consultation. We've also agreed that the CDR data must be submitted in a timely manner, and that timely manner is at sign and close, and that risk data must be submitted in a timely manner too. So those are some of the key outcomes of the PRR. You can see I'm going at a canter now. What could the market be doing? So this is again brokers and carriers. We really want the brokers to be creating MRC version 3 standard documents by September. It's ensuring that their systems meet the global reinsurance data standards from Accord, ensuring that they have their API strategy and that they're en route really. It aligns with a lot of firms who are going down the data first route anyway, but making sure that the API strategy is aligned and how in the future they will create and consume EBOT and ECOT messages. So what's next from the kind of data side of it? There really is an Accord implementation guide that will be provided from Accord to help people establish what needs to be done. As I mentioned, it's completing that core data record with claims data fields and some treaty and delegated authority alignment. And then it's obviously down to the brokers and carriers on what they can actually do. I just wanted to go through the global premium and claims build, plus the timeline for the latest sequences and the deployment phases. So I'm going to speed on through. I won't spend too much time on these. You have maybe seen from prior presentations that Blueprint 2 is being built under 5 different sequences. Foundational was the plumbing that really set everything up to enable the digital services to be built. The global premium claims services is now live for global business, not London market. That's sequence 3, which is being worked on now. Sequence 4 is DA and claims, and again you'll see the timeline for delivery of that is next year as well. And then finally the gateway, which is sequence 5. So if you always have those sequences in mind, as I say, this is where we are now, and those kind of London market changes will make the IPOS and ICOS platforms suitable for subscription business, and obviously the gateway we'll touch on in a moment. This gives a more detailed view of what's left to build within sequence 3 and 4, and you can see down here there's a block and delegated authority additions. So the way that we work is build the foundation system platforms, ICOS and IPOS, adapt them for London market subscription business, and then adapt them for DA business as well. And that's sort of in the first quarter of next year. So say gateway, that's the thing that actually validates the data as it comes through for open market risks, and will potentially be for DA once we kind of get to that point. But this is a really important part of it. Quality data is the essence of enabling automated downstream processing, such as premium accounting and settlement and claim settlement. So the gateway is a vital part in that validation of the data. And again, here's a breakdown of what's being looked at over the next number of quarters to enable that gateway to be in place by September next year. There is now, I say, a phased deployment approach to the digital services. So really, we've got the Vanguard people testing what they need to do phase 1, which is that utilization of the JV's internal digital services, with the market still utilizing EDI messages. And then when we go to that cutover from heritage services, there's going to be a number of platforms or portals that are stood down in the market, with ICOS and IPOS taking over. And IPOS, as you may recall, is the International Premium Orchestration Service, and ICOS is the International Claims Orchestration Service. And then as we move on into September, we will see the adoption of phase 2 digital services starting, where those market firms utilize econ and ebot messaging. So this deployment approach is a departure. We had originally said you get to kind of September and you could either go to transitional services, as we're calling it, still utilising EDI messages, or digital services utilising ebot and econ messages. But now the phase is everyone moves to digital services in June, utilising EDI, and then from September you can utilise ebot and econ. The reason for that is the market moves it really at the whole together at the same speed. The way that it would work, they would have had to have had old mainframe services live concurrently with the new digital services, and the complexity around that and cost around that really would have been too great for the market. So this brings access to digital platforms sooner. There's a number of things here around kind of improved technology for the portals, brings testing earlier, gives the market confidence in the new platforms that they're actually working before they move to the end-state digital messaging. It still gives the option for market firms to move to digital services at their own pace from September, but within a kind of parameter of maybe a couple of years. And we know that this is around continuous delivery. So with the new digital services, they're built in the cloud, AWS services. So the kind of development pathway will be a continuous theme. And obviously with those platforms, it's more secure. We've got better kind of business continuity that runs with it. Some more detail around those steps. I think you could probably look at those at your leisure, because it's really just sort of going into how it really works. So I'm going to skip through these. And then again, it's just really summarizing. So that's where we are on the timeline, same as you saw earlier, but it's just to remind that we know now from June phase 1 and from September, June phase 1 and from September phase 2. Now, I wanted to just, I'm going to skip over that one, that's kind of a bit more detail of the timeline, give you an opportunity to ask any questions on all of that before I look at the DA strategic principles. And hopefully that roller coaster wasn't too fast, but any questions I'm happy to take.
Yeah, and just a quick one. So you're mapping 5.2 standards and you're providing API standards. So by the end of next year, can we do a way forward, right?
Good question. So what we're looking at is the joint venture will come out with the DA strategy in Q3. So it will kind of understand how it can either utilize IPOS and ICOS for DA perhaps. Also, it's understanding how that would work. You know, DCOM and DDM will still be there, so they may be kind of seen as transitional services, but again, we've got to really be clear and clarify what happens. So it's not doing away with bordereau for the whole market from that moment in time. It may be that there's a kind of transition towards digital services which are yet to be fully defined and fully confirmed to the market. So that's the caveat around that. So you've got to kind of hold your horses a little to understand what the JV offering will be and how that will be phased in the same way that we're mentioning for open market.
So sorry, that strategy in Q3 of this year will have a plan and a timeline to it?
It better do. So the thing that I'm going to touch on next was the strategic data principles for DA, because originally we've done, well, actually without going into that section, we'll cover that off then. But yeah, so Q3 is the DA offering from the JV and timeline. Yeah. Any other questions from the approach to open market? Okay, I'll move on to the DA strategic principles. There is some more information on the Lloyds.com website, and I'll ping a link to it to you afterwards, because I think there's a little bit more on there that you can kind of digest at your own leisure. But basically, there's some work done last year. We spoke to a fair chunk of the market, some including brokers, cover holders and managing agents. We wanted to know what were those pain points today and what key themes could we really work on and focus on and moving things forward from a data perspective. We know that the Data Council has been looking from the open market risks with the MRC version 3, as I mentioned, the core data record. Now, this kind of creates a great standard to really move DA data structure to. It would be ideal to have a single set of standards for the London market as a whole. So again, that alignment of cover holder reporting standards to the CDR will be done kind of through this year to see how that can be achieved. We also looked at innovation through managing agents and managing general agents, and kind of how technology was really making the steps forward that we needed. So there are a number of MGAs already utilising a digital first approach. So how can we capitalise on that? Not necessarily just focus on those that are using the least modern technology. How can we capitalise on those that are using the most modern technology? So we think there's a significant portion of the market that can actually use data first approach. And again, it's how do we unlock the capabilities for them to move forward. Market-wide performance, we know that that's a consistent theme across Lloyd's, and you've heard earlier from the DA team around, they're not just looking at processes, they're looking at the business distribution and structure, etc., and the performance of that business too. So this kind of would help provide and support more data around business performance as we go forward. In terms of the principles, we think it'd be a phased approach. Again, if you've got multiple transmission methods in place, we know that there's some firms that will be able to move forward with a kind of more digital approach, and others that will take and need time to get to that. The market change really around adopting would be over a period of time. So some are already API enabled, others aren't. So we think that we need something that can support the market with short-term changes, and then really those that can take a longer-term view, and with an I can't say the word, iterative development and testing with the market. So again, it's all about bringing the market forward over time, but with those that are more technologically advanced, allowing them to take that step faster, but supporting those who perhaps need a little bit longer to get there. So we've touched on already using one standard data, one set of data standards for the market where possible. And so that really means that we've got the alignment to do with cover holder reporting standards and how that works with the core standards as well. And ultimately we could get to EBOT and ECOM messaging. That data first approach powered by the API. So again, utilizing a data first approach and enabling optionality. So that is the bit around, if you want to use bordereau, you can continue to do so for a time being. And if you want to use APIs, you can. So it really is around that optionality for the market, rather than trying to force something that people aren't ready for, but opening up for those that are. So I think they were probably the key things that I wanted to cover for DA data standards. So any questions around that? Stunned silence. And hopefully I'm catching up well for you as well.
Yeah, we have to move on. So yeah,
that's
helpful.
Okay, and so the next thing I wanted to do was to introduce Saidul Islam from our FCP team, who is going to be on FCP, strangely enough. Saidul.
Cheers, Alan. Hi guys, I'm Saidul Islam, and I work on the adoption and engagement team in the Future Lloyd's team. I'm going to be giving you a quick update on FCP. For those that don't know what FCP is, it's a new funding and payment solution which provides fast and direct payments to policyholders. There are a number of benefits for the MAs. For example, it was reduced effort in loss fund management, and also the biggest benefit is for the DCA or the TPA, as they are in a position to approve payments in an efficient and fast manner because they have direct access to the MA's funds. The current scope of FCP is all Lloyd's binders, so all binders are 100% placed in Lloyd's. On a single tenant subscription basis. The three currencies currently on FCP are GBP, USD, and Canadian dollars. Aussie dollars, Australian dollars are coming in as planned for August. So that is the plan. And other currencies are due to be introduced in the forthcoming year. With regards to the current status of FCP, we have 29 MAs that have currently signed the market user agreement, which is in partnership with a market user agreement which is issued by Limos, who run the actual market service. And 29 MAs have currently signed up, which represents 80% of Lloyd's Delegated Authority gross written premium, and that is as of the 2021 year of account. So you can see the status of the MAs that have signed the MUA on the Limos website, which the link is provided on this page. This slide is going to be shared, so you see a link there. With regards to adoption support, so there's quite a lot of support which is given, and a lot of engagement that is kicking off now as well. So Vitesse, who we are in partnership with, they run an accelerator support program for the managed agents, which is basically, it's in the word, quite literally, this is providing extra support to the MAs for the progress and the onboarding of FCP. And the other level of engagement which we have just kicked off is providing each MA with data the data that we have or populate from based off of the CRS. And what this data contains is loss fund data, binder data, and we found from the initial meetings that we've had meetings with about 5 MAs so far, and what we found is this data that we're giving to them is really helping them. For the ones that have signed the MUA and have onboarded binders, is helping them onboard more binders or identify more binders to onboard. And for the MAs that haven't signed the MUA, it's giving them a chance to look at binders that they may have, potentially in scope. So, for them, it's a case of, we'll sign that MUA and then we get these binders on board because these are binders which have already been identified for us. So this is the kind of the new level of engagement that we've just kicked off. And we're planning on seeing all 54 MAs in the market by the end of July. What I mean by the end of July, I mean by the end of the third week of July, because we know everyone goes on holiday in the last week. So we're planning on meeting all 54. We've had a number of meetings so far with many more this week and next week. So that is the next step for the market participants, which is increasing usage by giving them this data. And that's the update on FCP.
Great.
Any questions?
Thanks very much, Nigel. Thanks, Alan. Much appreciated.
That's okay.
Next up on our list, I think we're running short on time, but Jack and Harris on Lloyd's Europe. If we run a bit over, we'll continue on. But if you give us a quick update on what's going on. It's been about couple years maybe since we last had you on here. We thought it was a good idea to understand sort of priorities, objectives, how things are going for Lloyd's Europe. Over to you guys.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. We prepared some slides and Harris will race you through it to be within the time, but I leave the word to Harris, but we are very happy with the invite to this event. Thank you very much.
I mean, I'm just going to say, Marco, I mean, I've only got 5 minutes. I did have a dozen or so slides to go through. I was wondering, we're happy to maybe come back at the next one to kind of give a more full update rather than having to canter through and not really give anybody the opportunity to kind of question, or I'm sure there are some. and I need to drop off directly at 11
Okay.
anyways. I wouldn't have the ability to kind of carry forward. So I'm happy to kind of take a view from yourselves and Julia as to attending the next one, rather than having to kind of rush through it.
Okay, I think that would probably be a better call.
I'd agree as well. That would be great.
I just feel bad that we didn't carve out enough time for
Yeah.
you.
There was a lot of important updates, and it's great to hear some of the updates that Stuart and Alan were giving. So happy that.
Yeah, we were just keen on Lloyd's Europe because clearly it's important to many of those in our community. There's many MGAs that are trading in Europe, and we recognize that's a key area to push.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to chat. I'd be happy if you ask your members if there's any burning questions that they have or anything from beforehand, so then at least we can tailor it in regards to what your membership are looking for in terms of that update.
Okay, great. Thanks, Harris. Much appreciated. Julia, if we could put that on the next agenda for the next meeting, that would be much appreciated. With that, it comes to just really the last item on our agenda, which is just any other business. Anything more from people in the office?
Nothing from us. Thank you, Marco.
Okay. With that, I just want to thank everyone who presented today. So very much thank you to Stuart, Carla, Alan, Seidel, Jack and Harris for having prepared but didn't actually have the opportunity. Thank you very much all. Julia, when's our next?
Next one is 12th of September.
22nd of September?
No, 12th of September.
12th of September. Okay, great. Thank you very much all. And with that, we'll say goodbye.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.